Alright, what's good, y'all boys? And this video is gonna be about necromancy lore that I've been just looking through. Like, I was literally looking at the screenshot of, like, the announcement of the necromancy title, or like the name of it, and you see how there's like a purple, dark blue on the left, and then gray on the right. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is mad interesting, and you can see the tail having like this turquoise green-ish, but I'm really just looking at the left and right, how the purple and the gray. So these are my thoughts on this. So you guys remember the Fort 4 and 3 quest, the murder mystery, that quest that had just came out? So you guys remember the dagger that you could examine, and when you spacebar through it, it says Amon Ra, and what a peculiar name. And then he says Mauritanian, which I don't think it is, because Amon Ra is similar to this. Right, so if we look back at it, it says the Menaphite pantheon seems to largely be based on the gods of ancient Egyptian mythology, and Tumenkin is very similar to Amon Ra, which you can see on the knife that it has the exact same name. For example, the greatest deity of the Egyptians associated with light, right? So if we look at the description of Tumenkin, let's look at it. Alright, so if we look at Tumenkin on the wiki, it says his alignment is sun and light, or light and sun. And you see down at his colors, it has gray. And if we look at necromancy, it's gray with the mancy side. So that's what I'm thinking. So I'm assuming that part is going to be dealing with the desert and the Menaphite pantheons. And if we do a little bit more research on Tumenkin, you can also come to your player-owned house and look up this book. It deals with Bilrak, right? So Bilrak, and it says letter signed, Pontifex Bilrak, right? And it's a transcript of the letter found at the Santistan dig, right? So we have it, and go to page 9. So they talk about Temekel, and they see an object, right? A great diamond, 8 inches in length, which they call the heart of the sun, right? And Temekel, one of the strongest Majorat that was associated with Tumenkin. And this is basically what that diamond had did. So, though highly trained legionaries easily defeated the nomads, whenever they fell, a flare of fire from the diamond brought them stumbling back to their feet, undead. So we understand that the diamond, Carib Ebe, which is in the possession of a mascot at the moment, because we had to give her the diamond in Diamond in the Rough in that quest line. So we see that it can deal with them coming back to life as undead. So we can see that this is dealing with necromancy also. And if we continue reading, it says, using sleight and trickery, I bypassed their front line and seized their treasure. I threatened to smash it, forcing Temekel to surrender, which he did, his eyes blazing defiantly. Lucian took no chances with our prisoner, severing his head with several blows from his sword. Temekel, who could have crushed Lucian with his mind alone, put up with no resistance. His skull rolled from his shoulders before coming to rest, staring directly at me. Tumenkin will return, brother. And when he does, your empire of traitors will burn. So that's another indication how I'm thinking Tumenkin will return. And this right here is also interesting. Tumenkin is confirmed to have survived in some form in Fight Club during that quest. A masker reveals her intention to eradicate him for good. while Tumenkin possesses Jabari and 2 thralls in a failed attempt to persuade a Masker to stop. A Masker refers to 5 discrete remnants of Tumenkin's existence: his essence, his shadow, his name, his bow, and his heart. However, she believes that only the bow and the heart still remain. And if we look at this little footnote, it says, "You, Tumenkin, should be afraid. Your essence was spent long ago. Your shadow is no longer cast. The people have forgotten your name, and once Scabarus," so that's also a big thing too, Scabarus hasn't shown himself, finally debases himself, which is like lowers himself. "Your bow shall be entirely corrupted. Then I shall devour your heart, and with it the last remnant of your existence." So we can see that the bow refers to the lesser gods, Het, Scabarus, Abmenkin, and Krondis. So that's also something else to take into account. Right, so now that we're done talking about Tumenkin and my thoughts on the gray, what that color meant, let's move on to the purplish. And let's talk about who we all know has this color is Zaros. And let's just look about what Zaros and his color is. So looking at it, we're going to assume the opposite of Tumenkin, which is sun and light. And if we see Zaros' alignment, on the wiki, it says fate and control, and then darkness. So we can see that looking on the other side, it would be darkness. So we can see that it's purple, black, and gold. So let's delve a little bit deeper. So with the purple, I'm believing it's gonna be dealing with Zaros, because he's currently inside of the Codex, which is in the Archaeology Guild, where we turn off all those artifacts. And he's currently in there with the Shadow Anima, Saradomin's Crown, and he's going through Erebus looking for something, quote unquote. So when he comes back, he's saying to us, the players, and the World Guardian, which is us, that when he comes back, we're no longer going to be friends. And with Necromancy, this is what I'm starting to believe right here. And if we just take a look at some of the dialogue from how Guthix was viewing Zaros, it says this: "He was like a myth, spoken of in hushed tones by those of his followers who had not aligned, who allied with other gods. I would very much have liked to meet him. We shared some ideals. We both valued mortal life enough to step aside, though where he would leave them to their own devices and their own failures, I would guide them subtly toward their true destinies." And if we just continue down, right? "However, Zaros may have underestimated Guthix's wisdom, believing that he was oblivious to the Elder Gods and the Great Revision, and that Guthix's inaction had created dire circumstances to the inhabitants of Gilnor. This does not appear true, as the Guthix was fully aware of the Great Revision and other threats of the universe, such as the Broken Needle, which we had seen with the Jazz and the Erebus quest, in that quest, and the Shadow Breach, which was the Battle of the Monolith, right? And this was talking about, like, you know, in the Hall of Memories, where you would do the divination in Guthix's place, right? That's also where you would get that information. And Guthix had not spoken very much about his own views on Zaros, but had advised the World Guardian, which is us, during their visit to the Guthix of the past, to be cautious of him, explaining that his return from the physical death, which is basically Zamrak stabbing him with the Staff of Armadale was unnatural and likely came at a great cost. And this is coming from the light within, saying to return from death is an unnatural act, requiring great power. Be wary of this god, adventurer. Such power rarely comes without a cost. So that's also something to be mindful of. So now if we go to the necromancy side, you know Orcus in Caradet, you know the chapel. You would basically come here and you would see this. So if he's presented as a necromancer, you can see him here, the Orcus stained glass with the upside down star. And if you examine the altar, it's odd to see an altar not being dedicated to Zaros. And it's kind of saying, okay, so who is this Orcus guy that made him this prevalent? And we can continue through. If you have your archaeology journal, go to the archaeology artifacts, Zarosian, and you can see the necromantic focus. This book, the Orconomicon, or Com, aka the Book of Orcus, was used as a magical focus primarily by Praetorian guards, but seemingly some of Caradet's pontifex also own copies. It primarily focuses on necromancy. This is also interesting. Another thing too is the portable phylactery. And it says in here, our research suggests that the Praetorians carried these as weapons, each containing a demon soul. So that might be a thing with future updates, because we've seen how Moya was able to capture Avarice, or, you know, one of the Twin Furies. So once thrown at a group of enemies, the demon would steal a host and set upon the rest. The slang term for them was Diabolus. And if you go on your, translate to, Latin, Diabolus, it says the term for them was the devil. And also to, tie it back with Tumenkin and Zaros, you can see here how the Solomon Umbra, which this painting appears to depict a battle between Zaros himself and Tumenkin, or Tumekin, the leader of the Menaphite pantheon. The title roughly translates to Shadow of the Sun, which, it could also tie into, Tumekin's shadow, which is, the old school RuneScape's weapon. And also you can see too how, in the Pater's log, page 3, if you just, open up your archaeology journal, which is like this, and go to the alt of Orcus, page 3, and, just go to page 4, and, you can read this on your own time. But meanwhile, the handful of Praetorians that remain of the cult of Orcus have been tasked with raising the fallen. So we know that they've been dealing with necromancy for a while. And also, this is really interesting too. The Virtus book that you get from Nex, which is a drop? You can right click and read it. So when I had read it, these are some things that I had figured out while reading it. So while reading it, you can go to the 4th page, and it says this. It says a scholar and some local miners were sent out from the fortress alongside glacis, and confirmed that some of the strata, speculated to have formed roughly 500 years apart, leaks a strange energy from particularly dense concentrations of black and purple crystals. I'm assuming they're talking about the black crystals from, ED 1, 2, and 3, and of course the pirate questline. And it says their formation remains a mystery, but my suspicion is that they appeared as an unintended result of the secretive ritual conducted nearby those closest to our Lord. So I'm assuming Zaros has something to do with the Blackstones also. So let's continue. So it says here, this is nothing like the primal forces that might be bound into runes. It's something purer. Glacis could only describe interaction with it as feeling like that of an embrace or raw emotion. from something greater than a single being. Because if you examine the black crystals in Elite Dungeons 1 on Sirius' neck, it says there's spirits writhing within. So that's what I'm thinking here. Most unscientific, but she seems to manipulate the energy. I leave her to experiment while travel to other 4 and 3 fortresses. And let's continue to page 10. So, it says here, I returned to Garok after 3 weeks to find the strange energy gone and Glacies transformed. Inhuman, but somehow not. The body is changed, but the essence remains. Conscience, unfazed, and entirely tuned to ice magic. She tells me that this energy only reacted to fill a void, that she drained her own life to weave this strange power into her very soul. And from what I'm understanding about this is that, you know, the Ring of Death now, it says, like, you know, when you die, it says this. You see here how if the wearer dies, you know, of course, we know what it does. But when this happens, the player receives this message. Your Ring of Death protects you from death, but your life force is being drained. So it's to fill the void of you dying. Like, you're giving up your life for the essence to come back and not die. Your life force is being drained. So we can almost say the same thing here. How she tells me that this energy only reacted to fill a void. That she drained her own life to weave this strange power. So she drained her own life. Your life force is being drained. So this is kind of going similarly along like what the Ring of Death does. It's almost like the Ring of Death is kind of necromancy itself. Now let's continue on with it. To weave this strange power into her very soul. Had I been present, I wouldn't have allowed such a dangerous act. Necromancy is better left to those skilled enough to join Zamora Gal's legion. But the result is agreeable. So it's showing that Zamora Gal knows about necromancy, Moya knows about soul magic, and there's so much more going into it. But for right now, I'm gonna stop it here, but this is like my understanding of some more lore on necromancy. It's freaking cool, right? Alright.